Hey filmmakers, how's it going? Welcome back to yet another late night live stream, at least for me here in Arizona. It's late, and for those of you joining on the East Coast, welcome. It's even later for you. So as you saw in the title, what we're going to talk about here is what camera brand is the best. And I know this is a controversial topic. I know, I get it. Can you really declare one brand as being the best? Well, let's talk about it. And I'm glad y'all are here. So definitely start chatting and keep the chat going. Let's have some interesting debates in the chat, and I will be replying to everyone that I can. So, just comment right now, starting off. And if you're watching the replay, leave a comment below as well. What camera brand do you think is the best? Even if you don't own it, what camera brand is the best? And that could be a whole host of different things that could determine what is best, right? That's up to you. So please leave a comment below. All right. Let's see what's going on in the chat for a second here. What's up, RPB Productions? How you doing? DVS Jayathi says Blackmagic is best. And Greg Jones waves howdy, y'all. How you doing? Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining. So this is a topic that I think could get a lot of different fanboys upset. The Canon fanboys, the Sony fanboys, everyone's going to start battling it out. So yes, let's chat about it, but let's be practical as well and pragmatic about what we're actually debating, right? So because I think there are some things that make a brand maybe better than the other, and some different features. So as you saw in the title as well, which brand is the best? Not Nikon. Hint. I think that's just a funny joke, because for most of us that are doing video production, we're not shooting Nikon, but obviously in the photography world, Nikon is like massive. I think they're second to Canon really when it comes to photography. But for us video and filmmakers, yeah, most of us aren't shooting Nikon. There are a couple people out there shooting with the Nikon Zs. I know, since they came out with all their mirrorless cameras, they're trying really hard, but it's just not happening for them, I don't think. And that's interesting. Let's get that out of the way right now up front. Nikon is definitely not the best video camera. It is interesting what they're doing, having a full frame mirrorless camera. That shoot, pretty high resolution. You're getting 4K. I think some of them are doing Blackmagic RAW now if you use an external recorder. So there's definitely some interesting things happening there, but I think most of us are never really going to transition to only Nikon for video. So that's already out of the box, right? I think that's a no. So before we get too much deeper into this, let's just see what the market says. What do the people say about what camera's the best? And that can be determined by what people are buying, right? So see if I can get this to pull up here. All right, here we go. And this is a chart, hopefully you can see it okay, of market share. Okay, so this is what right now in 2021, the total market share of camera brands. And of course, you're going to see the most popular ones on here. If you don't see your camera brand or favorite one, it's in the other category, right? So Canon coming in with a whopping 45.4%. So they almost own 50% of the total market share. So does that make them the best because everyone has a Canon, or half the people that have a camera have a Canon? I don't know. My first camera was, well, not my first camera, but my first DSLR, my first real professional camera was a Canon. It was a Rebel T3i. That was my entry point into this. Let me know, did you ever shoot on the Canon T3i or any of the other Ts, like the T2i, the T4i? I think they kept making them. Even like the T5i, I think they keep going. So let me know, did you ever shoot on one of those cameras? It was definitely an entry point for me. It was the first camera that shot in full 1080p HD, 30 and 24 frames per second with a nice flip out screen. So that was a big game changer for me, and I think an entry point for a ton of people. I think the buff nerds, Jacob Owens, I think he started on the Canon Rebel T2i, so one before me, and it's a great entry-level camera, but is it the best? Is Canon making the best stuff because they own the most market share? I think it's interesting to think about. Next up, you've got Sony with a 20.2% market share. pretty good, but less than half of what Canon's doing. I think here on YouTube, you see a lot of YouTubers using Sony cameras to shoot their videos, and it's definitely one of the most popular ones that you see. You would almost think that Sony might be the most popular just because of how popular it is here on the platform, but it's not. The numbers say it's half the size of Canon. Then you've got Nikon coming in 18.6. And again, really that market share is for photography much more than it is for video, but it's interesting to look at. Fujifilm, 4.7%. So really small. Unfortunately, I love my Fujifilm. This is the X-T4. I've done a ton of videos on it, reviews, rig builds and everything like that. But man, I sure do love this camera. And I know a bunch of you guys found the channel here from my different Fujifilm rig builds and things like that. So what do you think? Is Fujifilm kind of an underdog? I'd love to talk about that for a second, because really Fuji is doing some incredible things. Yes, this is APS-C, crop sensor camera, but it has so much great tech built into it with, being 10 bits. And 10-bit 420 or 422 if you use an external recorder like the Ninja V. Great color science. And Fuji's been in the game for a really, really long time. I can't remember exactly when they started, but I think it was like in the 40s or 50s. They've been around a long time, maybe even longer than that when I last looked it up. So they know photo and video pretty well, and they get that film look really nice. And man, I just love the image quality. And you know what? They have some massive style points with this the body, the texture, the metal, everything about it's great. And there's companies like Sony copying it now with their A7C, giving it that metal look. So sad that they don't have a greater market share, but man, I think they're great cameras. Panasonic, let's see, they're coming in at 4.7, so that they're matched with Fujifilm. And that's another interesting stat for me, because Panasonic is really popular with a ton of people on YouTube. They love GH4, GH5, extremely popular cameras. And I think the GH4 and GH5 were some of the first ones that were APS-C video cameras to come out with 10 bits and give you vlog. And so that was just incredible. I know, Caleb Pike was a huge advocate of those, DSLR video shooter, starting out with the GH4 and GH5. Just really, really popular cameras. But again, the market share just isn't there. The consumer is just enamored by Canon and of course Sony. Canon, I think, has been around just so long and has such great, market spread, not even just in cameras, but printers and whatever other garbage, not garbage, stuff they make. They make some good stuff. Anyways, let's continue on. Other 6.4%. So that's going to be things like your Blackmagic cameras, the Z cams, things like Red, Airy, a lot of the brands that many of us can't afford in the higher end cinema cameras, unfortunately. So man, looking at this spread is just really interesting for me. I don't know about you. I don't know if you're a data person, but I went to school for business. I did my whole major in business. And so I love looking at numbers and, pie charts like this. It's really interesting. Besides just the art of filmmaking, it's interesting to see what the numbers say. So hopefully that was kind of fun for you to check out with me. Before I get any further into breaking some of that down, let's check out the comments. Looks like you guys have told me what you think is your favorite. So let's see. Aravind, what's up? He says the Bolex is the best. Yeah, man, that's funny. It's obviously an old camera. I saw a really cool thing at NAB in 2018. So a couple of years ago, I think maybe it was 2019. Anyways, obviously we didn't have it last year because of COVID and everything, but there was a guy there with a Sony FS7, and he had rigged it out with his own custom Bolex mount. So mounted on the front, and then he could switch between 3 different lenses that he had mounted. I think they were all prime lenses, and he could just rotate through them. If you look it up, Sony FS7 Bolex camera, I'm sure you can find it. It's really interesting. Maybe I can find it and pull it up here later. But yeah, really interesting concept. Scott Slasher World, what's up? He says Blackmagic. Jack Skiluna, I can never say anyone's username, sorry. He says unpopular opinion, but Fujifilm. You're right, it is not the most popular opinion. Only 4.5% of the consumer market goes to them, right? Or 4.6, I think it was. But I love them, I really do. Let's see. Recipe to Delicious says, have you seen the new Blackmagic Studio 4K? Yes, I have. I saw the announcement on that. I was watching the live stream on that. Very interesting. I'd love to chat more about that momentarily. It's an interesting looking camera for sure, being able to do live streams with it, and a really good price. I think it's about $1,500, so it's pretty cool. Let's see. Scott Slasher says, yes, shot on the T3i. Great camera, good entry points for sure. Recipe to Delicious says there are still Canons. The T7i is still in line. Wow. So they've made a lot of the I lineup since. DVS Jayathai says Blackmagic is the best because of the image quality, low price, not all the buttons, menu's great, film look, and it's getting better and better with the latest models. Yeah, there's so much great things going on with Blackmagic right now. Their market share is obviously really, really small when it comes to the full market, but man, there's just some really great things going on right here. I've got the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, and I'm about to drop a Pocket 6K Pro review. Maybe if you watched the last video on exposure that I just did, all about how to get the right exposure with different tools like false color, zebras, I was using the Pocket 6K Pro in that video, and I will be releasing my review of the Pro next week. So keep an eye out for that. But yes, incredible cameras. And so that brings me to a little bit more on Blackmagic. Let's talk about that for a second. I think they're fantastic cameras and really interesting because Blackmagic is, I would say they're a little bit still new to the game. They have been around for a bit of time. It's not like they were, came out just a couple years ago, but they are still a new camera manufacturer in a sense when you compare them to people like Canon, Fuji, Sony, guys that have been in the game for some of them almost 100 years. So they definitely are newer, but they have some advantages. Being a smaller company and being new to the game, they can innovate a lot faster than some of these other behemoths that they're competing with. I can't remember if it was Steve Jobs or maybe it was the owner of Twitter that said, move fast and break things. Let me see. I don't want to mess this quote up. Okay, it was Mark Zuckerberg. He said, move fast and break things. And so he was just, programming, and they were saying basically, let's make things, let's change things as quickly as we can. And who cares if something breaks? We'll fix it later, whatever it is in the coding, and just keep going. We're innovating as quick as we can. And I feel like Blackmagic is kind of in that sphere right now where they're like, move fast, break things. Let's just go and innovate. And I think that's really cool and interesting to see what they're doing. I mean, for instance, with the Pocket 6K, they listen to a lot of their consumer feedback. And I know a ton of you guys on the channel are Pocket 6K and 4K fans, Blackmagic shooters, because I've made a bunch of videos on it and rigs, and I see your guys' comments, and thank you for that. But they listened to the consumer, and they made a lot of changes on the 6K Pro, which I'm about to release. And you probably already know a ton of them. Things like having a flip out screen, that tiltable screen. It's something we all begged for, and they listened and they made it happen. Another thing, internal NDs. Everyone's been asking for that. They made it happen. Trying to improve the battery life with the 6K Pro using the Canon, no longer using the Canon batteries, but now using Sony, the Sony NPF batteries, which are slightly better. I didn't see a massive improvement there. Honestly, I still shoot with all V mounts, but they listened to the consumer and they made those changes. Even when they make mistakes, like move fast, break things, right? They came out with the cameras and a lot of people were complaining, hey, the color on the back, what's with that? It's looking bluish, the blue tint, right? I think everyone was saying it's got this weird tint. Well, they listened. They were like, oh crap, what's happening? Let's make that change. And they made it so you could go in and change the white balance of the LCD to adjust it, basically do a custom color calibration on the back of your camera, which is actually pretty cool tech that they added that. Although it came from maybe a manufacturing mistake or a firmware mistake, whatever it was, they've now innovated and added a way to calibrate your LCD. And that's not something you can do with the Fujifilm or with the Sony cameras. You can't calibrate that back LCD. So even that, they've innovated. So pretty cool that they're able to do that. I know I'm going on this long rant, but it's something to think about. What camera brand is the best? Well, who's listening to their customers? Blackmagic definitely is. And it's something that a lot of other manufacturers are so big, they're not hearing, things from us little guys, right? The little people screaming and shouting on forums and YouTube comment sections and whatever, Reddit or whatever it is. They're not all maybe hearing those things. So it's great to see. Let's see here. Other comments going on. So Aravind says the Bolux 16mm is the greatest camera ever made. So he's holding strong there. Awesome. Jack says, yes, I think Fuji is an underdog and underestimated. Yeah, it definitely is. Man, I'll tell you what, when I got this camera, it's now been a year. I can't believe that. When it first came out, there's just so much good packed into this small package, and the build quality is incredible. And a lot of people look at these dials on the top, and one, you may think, well, that's a little overwhelming, or it looks like a photo camera. But honestly, I love the hardware on the top because it makes it so easy to change your settings without even going into the LCD or menus at all. I can quickly just, boom, bump up my ISO with just a tiny little turn, and I can lock it with this button, and I won't accidentally change my ISO. I can change my shutter speed really quickly. Obviously, you can change your aperture and everything really quickly with these wheels. So having that hardware built in is incredible, and I love using it for video. When you work with larger cinema cameras like the Sony FS7, the Canon C300, C500, they all have all those buttons built onto the side of them, so you don't have to go into the menus, and it makes it really quick to change your settings. And I think that's a big advantage of Fuji, whereas some other cameras, have kind of left those out. You just can't quickly change those settings, especially on a lot of the Sony smaller cameras. It's better on the Sony FX3, which I have here. They do have white balance and ISO particularly, but you still have to use some of the dials or go in the menus. It's not as quick to just change those dials. So definitely some interesting innovations there. Let's see. DVS says, do a very minimal Pocket 6K rig. Okay, yeah, I'll have to look into that, man. This is such a camera for me that you have to rig out to make it usable. With the 6K, I'm always adding ND filters on the front, usually a matte box with NDs, a full V-mount battery, a cage, obviously, and an SSD. I guess you could get away with just those three things. You don't have to always add the side angle, the side handles or transmitters or an external monitor. But man, the 6K Pro solves a lot of the issues that I've had with the 6K. So I'm excited for you guys to see the review. But yeah, maybe I'll do a more simplified rig for that soon. Let's see, Coffee Boy 06, what's up? He says A74 wish list. And then he says Pocket 6K Pro is amazing for the price. Absolutely. $2,500 getting you an incredible camera with so much packed into it. It truly is, a cinema camera in a sense. But it's definitely not small. They still are using the Pocket name. This isn't it. It's actually down in a box downstairs. I got to send it back to Blackmagic, unfortunately. It's a big camera. It really is. It's a lot bigger than this. So interesting stuff. Not an easy camera to balance on a small gimbal, but it is possible with the right gimbal. Let's see. Recipe to Delicious says, and the battery grip for the Pocket. Yeah, you could definitely throw a battery grip on there. In my review that's coming out, I have the new battery grip that allows for 3 batteries to be in there continuously. Obviously, it's nice to have that much battery life, but it just makes the camera so much taller, and you can't put a cage on it. So those are some things I don't like. So I don't usually like rocking battery grips. I've used them in the past, but they're not the best when you want to rig out your camera. It becomes too tall and awkward, and it doesn't work with cages. What's up, Marcos? How you doing, man? He was on the last live stream. If you guys don't know Marcos, definitely check out his channel. He has a ton of really cool stuff. He's a good friend of mine, and it's great to have you here. He says, I recommend the Sony a6600 to a client of mine because they wanted autofocus, affordable price, and no 30-minute record limit. I couldn't recommend Canon to them because of the 30-minute limit. Yes. Heck yeah, dude. So that's what I'm shooting on right now. Sony a6600. Love this camera. Just like you said, I'm filming a lot of my YouTube videos on it now for the talking head portions because the autofocus is so incredible. And, like you said, no 30-minute record limit. When I was recording, a video last night, I was recording for a little more than an hour, and I don't have to worry about that time limit. So such a great recommendation for people getting into it or clients that want to make their own videos. So yeah, great pro tip there, man. So let's chat about that for a sec. Let's chat about Sony. Is Sony the best? It's second best, right? As you saw, I'll pull up the diagram here for those of you that haven't seen it yet. I guess it's not a diagram, the pie chart. Let me correct myself. Sony is holding 20.2% market share in the US. This is the US, by the way. This is not all of America, or excuse me, all of the world. This is just the US, North in America here. So 20.2% market share, less than half of what Canon is doing. They're still obviously a behemoth, especially for us videographers and filmmakers. Nikon is 2% behind them, but again, they really don't hold the filmmaking world. They're holding out the photography world pretty strong. There's as those being the big three: Nikon, Canon, and Sony. So Sony, are they the best camera brand? What do you think? I've been using them for a long time now. It's the primary camera that I shoot most of my own personal videos with. So YouTube videos where I'm doing my own talking and reviews and that sort of thing, shooting on the Sony a6600, and now if you watch the last one, the Sony FX3, which is their cinema camera, their small compact cinema line, and this is basically the one step up from the Sony a7S III. I've really been loving it. I'm loving shooting full frame again. Man, there's just a lot that I love about this camera. I'm really excited to make a review because I think it's underrated. A lot of people kind of poo-pooed on it when the a7S III came out, but dude, I would take this over the a7S III any day. So I think there's some interesting things coming out of Sony, and here's what I think about Sony. Let's go back here. Sony doesn't innovate necessarily as quick as some of the other camera companies like Blackmagic or Zcam. We'll talk about Zcam in a little bit, but some of the companies that are smaller, like Zcam and Blackmagic, they're able to innovate a little bit faster, whereas Sony is a behemoth. Sony doesn't just make cameras, they make the PS5, right, which no one can get, or they make computers and just so much random tech, right? Sony makes a ton of stuff. Ton of stuff. So they're one of those. They make movies, they make television shows, they make so much stuff. They have a studio, beautiful studio I was able to tour a couple years ago. And I love Sony, but they are a little bit slower to innovate. Okay. So the Sony a6600, like I'm filming on right now, like Marcus mentioned, it's only 8-bit, right? Which they could have put 10-bit into this camera a long time ago. These smaller APS-C cameras don't have that 10-bit option yet. So 8-bit is a bit limiting. You're not getting as much, of the color range. You're not getting as much dynamic range. It's just, you can see that compression a lot quicker, which is unfortunate. And that's one thing that it's just why haven't they done it? And I think the biggest answer to that is probably money. It's the business. So they have the same APS-C, 20 megapixel sensor in a ton of their cameras, a6600, 6500, 6400, 6300. A bunch of them are all using the same sensor. And so they can keep manufacturing that. They don't have to put more money into research and development, changing all that. It's expensive to do, but they can make new camera bodies, keep the same sensor instead. But for some reason they haven't, quickly made that innovation there. The Sony a7S III, when it comes to the alpha cameras, was the first camera to incorporate 12-bit. And that's what the FX3 has the exact same sensor as the Sony a7S III. So you can get 12-bit out of it, much better color science and dynamic range and everything. But it took them forever to do. We've all been asking for it for a long time. But I think it's because they're just too big of a company. It took them forever to make it happen. Whereas people like Fuji, 10-bit. It's been 10-bit for a while. And Blackmagic, also 16-bit linear, but really it's 12-bit. If you want to be a little bit more specific. But they were able to do that because they're a bit of a smaller company. They can move fast and break things. Whereas Canon, oh my gosh, Canon is the biggest, slowest monolith on planet Earth. Canon, if you're listening, you got to speed up your process. You're going to get left behind. Sony is coming for you. And they're a little bit slower too, but some of the companies like Blackmagic, Fujifilm, they're coming for you. Okay. Moving too slow. I love Canon. I I do. There's some great things that they're doing, and they do a lot of really nice things in their cinema lineup, but man, they move slow. Like, for instance, how many years, I don't even know, how many years, though, did Sony have mirrorless cameras and Canon was still doing DSLRs with a mirror when the video side of the world, the video production side, was saying, we don't want a mirror anymore. Take the mirror out. That's like some hick in the back country. Get rid of the mirror. We don't like it. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. But it's late here, okay? Bear with me. So they said, get rid of the mirror. And it took them forever to make a mirrorless camera. Finally, they came out with the EOS R. And obviously, they've changed and added much more now. EOS R5, R6. And those look like big innovations, but tell me in the chat, how many people do you know that own the Canon EOS R5 and the R6? I know the EOS R is definitely their most popular mirrorless, camera, or one of their most, except maybe the M50s. For the more affordable, but it took them forever to make it happen. It really did. They just weren't listening to their customer base that wanted mirrorless. And so many people switched to Sony, and I think they lost a huge bit of market share there. And I know a ton of guys that made that switch, myself included. I went from the Canon T3i to the Sony a7S III. I wanted full frame, everything like that. I wanted zebras, just all of those video assist features that Canon just refused to put into their cameras. I mean, people were jailbreaking them, right? They were putting Magic Lantern onto their Canons. They were voiding the manufacturer's warranty just to make their Canon cameras what they wanted them to be. They just didn't listen to their customers. And I think they lost a lot of people there. All right. I'm going on a Canon rant here. I'm sorry if I have Canon fanboys in here. I'm sorry. I apologize. But let's check it out. So Marcos, he goes, Fujifilm is piquing my interest. Yeah, dude. Great photo stills camera. It like literally has a toggle on the back. Maybe hard for you to see here, but for stills versus movie, it's quick to just switch into that, and all of a sudden all the settings change, and you can save them, and boom, 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 take your pictures. So if your clients are asking for photos as well, boom, 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 you can take them and then hit that toggle and go right into movie mode. Really great cameras if you're looking for something APS-C. When it comes to the full frame, a little bit too expensive for me still, with their full frame Fuji, what is it called? X1000 or X something, I don't know. But it's just a little bit too expensive for me. I think it's like $4,000 or $5,000 for their full frame or their medium format, whatever it is. But when it comes to APS-C, man, I think they're leading the pack. The dynamic range is fantastic as well. Recipe to Delicious says, your chart is about sales, right? It's not about who buys cameras for video. Yeah, you're correct. So the chart, like I was saying, it just shows you total market share of, consumers buying cameras here in the United States. This is not worldwide, but I imagine most things like this, typically your sales in America are indicative of sales worldwide. Obviously the numbers are going to change, but it's going to be pretty similar. So no, we don't know how much of this is for photo use and how much of this is for video use, because there's no information on that. They have sales info, but it doesn't say, they don't follow up later. Was this a videographer or a photographer that bought this Nikon? But I can tell you right now, Nikon's not the best camera, okay? Not for video. And most of the market share there is probably people using it for photo. So yeah. All right, let's see what else is going on in the comments. Okay, B47D. What's up, man? He says, or she, I guess it could be, says, what lens do you have on the A6600? So yeah, right now I'm rocking the 16 to 35 G Master f2.8. So it is definitely a really great lens. I love that I can just boom, zoom in really quick if I need to, get a little bit too close, or I can pop out here and get a nice wide of the whole room. It's been a really versatile lens. Really happy that I picked it up. F2.8, obviously great for most things, low light, getting a nice shot depth of field. It's a great lens, and the autofocus is incredible. Anytime you are working with a native Sony lens, it's a little bit newer, especially on these newer cameras like the A6600 and the Sony FX3, you're gonna have really good autofocus. So, let's see. Recipe to Delicious says, I think Panasonic, Sony, and Canon would be higher. I work at a camera shop. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, you probably see what people come in and buy, and it's interesting because you think some of them are really popular, but man, there's some that definitely have the foothold. Panasonic, if I remember right, looking at the chart, was like 4.6% market share, right? Or something along that. I'm going to keep referring back to this. Panasonic, 4.7% market share. So obviously they make a great camera, the GH4, GH5, a lot of good cameras coming out of there. And of course they have their larger, now full frame Panasonic Lumix cameras. I haven't shot with them yet personally, but I know they can do 6K recording externally with something like the Atomos Ninja V. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, a lot of great things coming out of them, but still small. I think they're really great for video. I don't know as many guys that shoot photography with Panasonic. I don't know. Let me know. Do you? I don't know. All right. So let's see. DVS says Sony and Canon are the best for hybrid camera category, but with the highest price possible. Yeah, I think that's possible. You know, that's it's subjective, right? It's your opinion that they're the best. I would say Sony, for me personally, is up there when it comes to hybrid, because you can obviously shoot great stills with any of the Sony Alpha cameras and great video. The tools are there. The zebras are built in, focus peaking, all the video-centric things. And then, of course, great photo stills camera as well. For Canon, I haven't shot as much with the Canon DSLR and mirrorless cameras recently. It's been a while. It's been a couple years. My last Canon that I personally owned was the Canon Rebel T3i. And yes, it was good for photo and video. I think you're right in the sense that the hybrid abilities there are really good. But it's not my favorite. I think for me, if I were to choose between Canon and Sony or Fuji, I would actually pick up the Fuji when it comes to being a hybrid camera, being Sony, being great at photo and video. I don't know, just my personal opinion with what they're doing. Let's see. Yeah, now DBS is asking if I think Panasonic is more innovative. Panasonic can definitely move faster, right? Move faster or break things. I'm going to keep repeating this. They are moving faster and, offering things like, 6K external recording and, 10 bit and everything like that Canon wasn't doing quicker. So yes, I think they're more innovative in that sense. But if any of you have ever worked at a corporate job and you've had to work with like the corporate overlords or whatever you want to call them, they move slowly, right? Like you have meetings to talk about meetings, to schedule another conference meeting, to have a Zoom or whatever it is. And just things move really slow. So innovating and making things new upgrades, new hardware and whatever it is, or software is very slow. Whereas with companies like Blackmagic, they're smaller, they can move quicker, they can, make new firmware updates faster, make new hardware tech quicker. Because they're smaller, there's less corporate bureaucracy to deal with. I don't want to get too much into that, but I think you guys know what I mean by this. Let's see what else is going on. Chase Daily, what's up? Says, I'd argue Fuji is better for hybrid shooters. It's just not as trendy and shoved in your face as Sony and Canon. I agree. Heck yeah. And you know what? It really is a fantastic hybrid camera for photo and video shooters. And it's in such a great body. The style is beautiful. I don't know if I could ever get rid of this camera. I've thought about selling it because, I'm rocking a lot of different ones now. But man, I love the look. I love the feel. I love its performance. Man, such a good camera. So what I will say though is maybe it's not as trendy or as hip as Sony and Canon, but man, this body style is trendy in my opinion. The look is just beautiful. So let's see. Levi Leto, how's it going? Welcome. He says, I'm a film student and I got the Sony a6400 with 18 to 135 millimeter kit lens. And I hate this lens so much, but I love the camera. Yeah, I was actually thinking about doing a whole live stream on this. If you can, never buy a kit lens again. Never in your life. If you're going to buy a camera, just buy the body and then just buy the lens you want. You save yourself money because it costs more to get the full kit. and then you end up not using that lens and you have to buy another lens. So just save the money, buy the body, and buy the lens that you want. I was going to do kind of a whole video about lenses tonight, but I think I'll hit it on another live stream. So it's a great camera though. I'm glad you're happy with the A6400. Like I said, I'm shooting on the 6600 right now, and I just sold my 6500. I love the A6000 lineup of cameras from Sony. They're really great. Let's see. B47D says, I have the A6400 as well with the 18-105, and it's been a great lens for me. It says, it's, very contrasting to the last comment, right? It says, the range on it has been so versatile when I can't afford many lenses. I only have the 18-135 and the 30mm 1.4. Yeah, so if you're obviously on a budget, going with the kit lens can be a great option because it has a huge amount of versatility there. You can go so wide and then pretty telephoto at 135 millimeters. So it is impressive. What I will say is I think that lens is an f4. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or maybe it's like one of those 2.8 to f5.6 or whatever it is. It changes as you zoom in and out. Whew, and for me, I hate that. It gives me anxiety. I had the first camera, like I was saying earlier, Rebel T3i, I bought it with a kit lens. I think it was an 18 to 55, and it did like that f 2.8 to 5.6 or whatever. So as you zoomed in, it stopped down, which was so frustrating because you would always have to change your aperture. And then when you were zoomed in too far, you didn't get enough light in. So having a fixed aperture, throughout the entire focal length zoom range is, oh man, it's just so nice to have. But I know when you're on a budget, you go with what you can. And I bet you that 30mm f1.4 lives on your Sony a6400 a lot more than the other one because you can get that nice shallow depth of field and great low light performance. Let's see. John Oy Powell says, you were right. Fuji is on the back burner and it's really great. Yeah, I can agree. This is not a Fuji. I'm not going to say Fuji's the best brand ever. I just like them. But I'm glad we got a lot of Fuji lovers in here because I think they're underrated. Domino Stories, what's up? Welcome back. It's always great to see you. Says, which brand provides, he says, for me, I love Blackmagic pocket cinema cameras and the Sigma 18 to 35. Yeah, we've already done like a whole, breakdown and talking about how much we love our Blackmagic cameras. The Sigma 18 to 35 is obviously like the go-to lens. If you own a Blackmagic camera and you don't own that lens, are you crazy? I guess I'm crazy because I don't own that lens, but I know everyone loves it. I don't know. I just never got it. I know it's really nice. Maybe I will. Maybe I still will. So welcome. Let's see. The Almirante family says, which brand provides the overall better tools for content creation? That's a good question. That's insightful. So I think pretty much between any of the brands, you can do great content creation. You can do great content creation even with your phone. But I would probably go with a hybrid camera. If you're talking about more of like YouTube, I'd probably go with a hybrid camera so you can take photos as well. Something like one of the Sony or Fujifilm cameras or the Canons are going to be really great for photo and video and give you those features you want. Whereas with the Blackmagic, it does take stills, but I don't know any human beings on planet Earth that take stills with this. Let me know. Do you take photos with your Blackmagic? I would love to know. But this wouldn't be my go-to for content creation in that regard if you need to do photo and video. But for me, Blackmagic is definitely my go-to when doing client work, short films, documentaries, because that film look is really there. And having B-RAW, being able to adjust my white balance and my ISO later on in post is incredible. So hopefully that answers your question just a little bit there. If I were to recommend one, if you're just getting into it, buy the Sony a6600. That's what I'm using right now. If you kind of want something that's not too expensive and it's going to be a good hybrid camera. Otherwise, get the Fujifilm X-T4. It just doesn't have as good of autofocus. So if you need to film yourself, like I'm doing now, autofocus isn't as good. Sony's a lot better with their autofocus, and same with Canon. Blackmagic autofocus doesn't exist. We all know it. And they know it too. So let's see. DVS says, if Panasonic built a GH5 like camera with Sony, like autofocus and a Super 35 sensor for about $1,500, it would be great. Yeah, I think that would be awesome. having better autofocus would be nice. I know all the GH4, GH5, that lineup is all micro four thirds. Me personally, I'm not a micro four thirds shooter. I know a lot of you guys shoot on the Pocket 4K. A great camera, has everything packed into it that the 6K and the 6K Pro does. For the most part, but it just has that micro four thirds sensor, which I don't like. It doesn't get enough good low light performance. The shallow depth of field really struggles, but you do get a lot cheaper lenses. So yeah, having a Super 35, Panasonic camera with good autofocus would be awesome. That'd be killer. So I bet Camera Conspiracies has a whole thing on that. He's always asking for stuff like that from Panasonic. So Domino Stories says, of course, 4K. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to there, but let me know. Let's see. I want to keep getting to all your comments. Please keep them coming. And if you're enjoying this live stream right now, please hit the like. This video's only got 6 likes on it, and there's 22 people here. So what are you doing? Hit like. All right. I love you guys. Just please share some love here. Let's talk a little bit about some other brands we haven't hit on yet, like Zcam. So Zcam, are they the best camera brands? Probably not, right? But I love what they're doing. They've got that beautiful cube form factor with all their new Zcam E lineup. They can move fast and break things, just like Mark Zuckerberg would say, although he's not my favorite person. It's an interesting mantra, right? Move fast and break things. And Zcam is doing that. They're just throwing cameras out there, seeing what people like, gravitating towards. They've got micro four thirds, Super 35, full frame, all different lineups. They have so many models, I can't even keep track. When I go to their website, I'm confused. I think they're confused because the way they list it is like, we've got this, we've got the M, we've got the E6 and the F8 and whatever. We've got an 8K or 6K, so many different things, but it's really cool that they're able to innovate that quickly. They have Z-RAW, which I've heard is pretty much trash. Let me know, do you use a Zcam? Do you use Z-RAW? But I think it's really cool that they're able to innovate that quickly and do everything that they're able to do. So that makes them a good camera brand in the sense that they're listening to their consumers. They're making things we're asking for. They're making that cube body style so we can rig it out the way that they want. If you're new to the channel, I love rigging out cameras. If you're not, you probably know that already. So it's so fun to rig them out, especially when they're in that cube form factor, like the Red Komodo. So easy to rig it out, throw a big battery on the back, the monitor you want, all the grips and everything you need. So I think that's really interesting. They've got a ways to go, in my personal opinion. I know they're not as good in low light, and the autofocus isn't quite there, and the color science I know isn't quite as on par as some of the other ones like Canon and Fuji and that sort of thing, and Blackmagic with their color science. So interesting though. I love to see it. You love to see someone else come into the game and add, throw their hat in the ring, like Blackmagic has done with the pocket cameras. They've made a whole new, entourage, a whole new cult of video, filmmakers. So interesting stuff coming there. And of course there's Red. What camera brand is the best? You've got Red, you've got Arri. And I think for most of us that are doing indie filmmaking, video production, we don't all own Reds. And I don't know if anyone here owns an Arri, but if you own a Red, let me know in the comments below. Yes, I've shot on them for different video productions where we've rented them. They're beautiful. They work great. But man, they're expensive, hard to own. Obviously, the Red Komodo is getting in there with its $6,000 starting price point. It's not really what it costs. It probably costs closer to $8,000, $9,000 once you actually get the memory cards you need, a monitor, a handle like the outrigger handle, all the different accessories you need, like the V-mount, battery system on the back. It's going to add up. But is Red the best camera? What do you guys think? I mean, a lot of people are, I guess, aspiring to get a Red, right? You see Red, you want the Red. I know I've been there. Marcos and I talked about this on the previous live stream that I did with him. He's got the Red Komodo, and I was just like looking at it and thinking, man, maybe, I don't know, maybe I want that. But, is it the best? I would say they're in a great position right now. Red, actually, in the cinematography world, is kind of the underdog when it comes to that sort of thing. I want to look this chart up here for a second. So let me check this out because I want to show you this data if I can. Let's see. It's basically talking about, which camera brands were used to shoot all the most recent movies that were like, I think in the Oscars. And okay, here's one for Sundance Film. Anyways, it's I'm not going to be able to pull it up right now, but it talks about what cameras were all used to shoot these different videos. And in reality, or these movies, and television shows, almost like everything that hit like the award shows, like the Oscars, was shot on an Arri camera. And then there were a handful shot on Red. And of course, other brands like the Sony Venice and, different cameras obviously as well. But Arri was the big front leader there. And Red, coming up behind as a bit of the underdog in that sense. Although we don't see them that way. I don't see Red as the underdog. But when it comes to film, like real, like big Hollywood productions, it's not always the go-to camera that people are picking up. They're still picking up the different versions of Arri cameras. So it's interesting to see that. But Red is an innovator, right? They came out with the Red 1 years ago. Boom, they threw their hat in the ring. They got in the ring with Logan Paul or Jake Paul started boxing it out with Arri. That was a terrible joke. I'm not a fan of that guy. But anyways, they got in the ring and started boxing with them and innovating, move fast, break things, right? I'm going to keep saying that in this live stream because it's so true. They've been able to really like add so much to their cameras, right? They came out with an 8K camera. I think they were one of the first 8K cameras. I don't know if they were the first, but they were one of the first 8K cameras. They added the Red Code RAW, which was huge. Having that ISO and white balance control later on after the fact. Just so many great things. They made that small, more cube-like form factor, monitors that clipped onto the top with no cables. They just have pins that go right in, batteries that mount right on the back. So they innovated really quickly, but they're obviously very exclusive and they're very expensive cameras to own and to operate. They're a little bit slower to operate. They're not great for quick turnaround stuff like YouTube productions or maybe even some of your client productions, depending on your time frame. So does that make them the best though? I don't know. They innovate pretty quickly. The Red Komodo, happened pretty quickly. And I think they'll probably come out with like a Red Komodo 2 within, probably a year or two. I wouldn't doubt them coming out with a newer version of that. It's still like impossible to find. You can't even buy it on their website, pre-order it really anywhere. It's really hard to find. But I don't know. Are they the best camera? I don't know. If you look at the numbers, Arri is winning there. And obviously these are cameras, a lot of us can't own, but hopefully we can rent and shoot on, and we can aspire to shoot on more in the future. All right, let's check out the comments. John Oy Powell says, what's your thoughts on the 4K 60p on the Fuji versus Panasonic 4K 60p, which is better? Okay, so I haven't personally shot on the Panasonic and used their 4K 60. So I couldn't say. I know it's extremely popular. A lot of people on YouTube shoot with it and love it, and it seems to work great. The reviews I've seen are good. I will say the 4K 60p on the Fuji is fantastic. Looks beautiful. It doesn't have a ton of compression, so it actually looks really good when you're shooting at the higher frame rates. No issues. It looks nice. I would say it's probably similar to the Panasonic, but I can't speak to it because I haven't done a side-by-side comparison yet. All right. Coffee Boy 6 says, what would be the best for a solo filmmaker cinematographer? That's a hard question, right? What's the best? That's what the title of this is. What's the best? It depends on what you do. Let me know what kind of stuff you're making. It really depends on the kind of things you have to make. If you are doing a lot of gimbal work, a lot of really quick moving stuff, I'd recommend something with good autofocus like the A7S III or the Sony FX3. Something like that with nice autofocus. If you're doing a lot of stuff where you can be locked off, it's more cinematic per se, or more scripted out, and you can move a little bit slower and you don't need to rely on autofocus as much, I would go with one of the Blackmagic cameras because of all of its advantages. Just everything packed into this at a great price point. And yeah, that's probably what I would do. So let's see. Recipe to Delicious says, not get kit lens. The R24 105 for R6 is a great lens. Canon, yeah, not a 2.8, but still a nice lens. Yeah, I think that's totally up to you and your style of shooting. For me, I will never buy a lens, and I think I'm going to talk about this more in the next live stream because it's fun to hear what you guys think, but I will never buy a lens that is not at least f2.8 or wider ever again. I've bought like one lens, and I think it was that kit lens that, didn't open up as wide. I just find that when I'm like at f4, 5.6 or above, that the image just doesn't look the way that I want it to. It doesn't have that shallow depth of field at all. It just doesn't look as nice and as creamy. So for me personally, I'm never going to buy a lens that it's not at least f2.8 again. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that it's a good lens working out for you. So that's really nice. Let's see. Domino Story says, yeah, because most of directors started using pocket camera like David Sandberg on his YouTube channel. Gotcha. Okay. I think I know what you're talking about a little bit more here earlier on. Okay, so Coffee Boy 6 says the Z Cam reminds me of a budget red camera. Yeah, totally. It has a very similar look to that as far as its actual form factor, and I think they're trying to get there with their Z Raw. They've obviously got a ways to go. They're still very new. They're still very new to this, whereas some of the other companies have been around a lot longer. But I'm excited to see what they do. I think I might buy a Z Cam eventually, depending on what they do. All right. Thank you guys so much for all the chats, by the way. I know there's a lot going on here. I'm trying to answer all of them. We're almost an hour deep into this, and I want to get to all of them before we get to wrapping up. Let's see. Oh, Coffee Boy says here in Canada we call it the Z Cam. Yes, all the Canada and like British countries and things. Z is Z, and Australia is Z as well. I guess it's part of like the royalty or whatever it's called. Let's see. DVS says Z Cam versus Pocket 6K. For me, I think hands down it's the Pocket cameras. I think they just have a lot more going for them in regards to B-RAW and, internal NDs on the 6K Pro. There's just a lot of really nice things going on there. I know Z-Cam has like some drop-in internal NDs as well with some of their adapters, but that's what I would pick. And I think the price range is fantastic. Let's see. 10A30 says, say hi. What's up? Thomas Helvenston says, what is the criteria that these brands must adhere to in order to be best? I wasn't here earlier, so I don't know if you already hit on that point, or is that a question that you're asking to us viewers? Yeah, so it's definitely an open-ended question. Thanks for asking that, Thomas, and welcome in. Let's check out the photo here. So this is just the data. These are total sales in America for 2021 so far, or this is either 2020 or 2021 data. I'm pretty sure it's 2021. Obviously, just because it has the most sales doesn't make it the best. Like Canon coming in 44.5%. They almost own 50% of the total market. Sony, half of that. Nikon also on par with Sony. But for me, I think Sony's not the best camera, especially for video. Great for photo, like I mentioned earlier, but some of the small players like Fuji, Panasonic, fantastic, and obviously Blackmagic is in that other category. So yeah, it's more of an open-ended question. What is the best camera brand out there? For me, I have my own personal opinions on that. I think it's hard to say. I don't even know if I can say this. No, I don't know if I could say this. I think Sony is one of my top favorites. It's what I shoot so much stuff on. At the studio I work at, I'm shooting on Sony FS5s, FS7, FS700, all those cameras all the time. But we also shoot on the Canon C300s and Canon C500s. But I'm more familiar with the Sonys to me. So to me, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's more of my preferred go-to brand because I'm just much more familiar and more efficient on them. But I wouldn't say it's my favorites. I love what Blackmagic is doing. I love what Fuji's doing. I don't know. I can't choose, honestly. I love them all for their different ways. And on a previous live stream or comment or something I got was like, how do you deal with so many different camera brands? And honestly, most of my lenses are Canon mount, and then I just adapt. So I throw Canon lenses on the Fuji, Canon lenses on the Sony, and of course, Canon EF mount directly on the Pocket 6K and the 6K Pro. So I'm just adapting most of my lenses. And then once you learn the cameras really well, you can match them easily. I can shoot in F-Log, S-Log, and film. So as long as I shoot all of them in in a flat picture profile, I can color match them pretty easily. So I'm not totally like, I guess you could say I'm more brand agnostic. I like all the brands for their different reasons, except Nikon. Just kidding. All right. Let's see. I'm going to try and speed through all your guys' questions here. Coffee Boy says Red and Sony are probably the only brands that have their own phones other than cameras. Yeah, definitely interesting. Red, I think they discontinued their hydrogen phone or whatever it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they've totally discontinued that. But very interesting. Domino Story says mostly they use the Sony Venice because the sensor comes apart, so it's kind of a customizable camera so it can fit in any short, tight places. Yes, the Sony, you're totally right. The Sony Venice is, if it's going to be used in Hollywood, that's the go-to camera. The only time you see another Sony camera in Hollywood per se is on documentaries. You will see the Sony FS7 Mark II, and that camera is used on a lot of documentaries. Thomas says, I've been using the GH5 pretty much since it launched, and it's definitely a camera that I would have stuck with if it wasn't for its horrendous HDMI latency. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't used the GH5 really. I've played with it a little bit, held it in my hand, but I haven't done a personal shoot with it. That's interesting. I didn't know the HDMI latency was that bad. Yeah, that would definitely be difficult when you're trying to use a larger screen to frame up, get things in focus, and it's going slow. That's frustrating. Domino Stories says, congrats on 50,000. Thank you very much. And thank you guys all for subscribing. If you're not subscribed already, you should definitely hit subscribe right now while we're live. Please subscribe to the channel. All right. Thomas says it's definitely a workhorse and suits pretty much any type of work from docs. Let's see. Studio, set location. It was a one and done with that camera. I just couldn't see past the horrible HDMI latency. Again, he's talking about the GH5. Great camera. I think there's really a cult following around the GH5. People love it. Great stuff. Let's see. What's up, Furman? How you doing? He says, Fuji really interests me, but I can't switch to it because I'm invested in Sony glass at the moment. What are your favorite Fuji lenses? Yeah, so as I said earlier, most of the lenses I have are Canon EF mounts, and I'm adapting them. So I only have 2 X mount Fuji lenses, right? 2 of them, and they're both from Viltrox. So it's not even a Fuji brand. It's a third-party Viltrox. I think it's the 23 millimeter, and then their 56 millimeter. Both of them are nice lenses. They have a full metal build, but the autofocus just isn't quite there. So yes, if you are already invested in a ton of Sony mirrorless glass or mirrorless glass for any camera lineup, it's hard to switch because if I bought a ton of Fuji lenses, I couldn't throw them onto the Sony. But if I have Canon EF glass, not Canon R mount, because Canon R mount is for mirrorless, it's not adaptable to any other camera body. That's why I invest in all Canon EF glass, because it's adaptable to anything, right? This has a native Canon EF mount, the 6K. Boom, throw it on there. I could throw a mount for Canon EF to Sony here. I could throw a mount to Canon EF to X mount here. I could throw EF lenses on Red. I could throw them onto the Z cam. I could throw them onto an Arri, any of those. That's why I invest in Canon EF and not so much the mirrorless glass, although it's really nice to have that native autofocus when you can afford it. But that would be my little bit of 2 cents there, is to get Canon EF glass because it's so adaptable to so many different camera bodies. It's just not going to work as well with your autofocus. Let's see here. Again, Thomas talking about the GH5, saying it still holds its own in 2021 and into the foreseeable future. Yeah, I think you're right there. It seems like a really good camera still. Domino Story saying Panavision started realizing digital camera. Yeah, Panavision is obviously another huge company that shoots, films in Hollywood and that sort of thing that we haven't touched on very much. Obviously, they have the Panasonic GH5 lineup and everything, but they have a lot of really high-end Panavision like cinema cameras. All right. Let's see. Garrick says the Panasonic S5 has a really good IQ. And he says, I have a Fujifilm X-T3, prices on point, good color science. Yeah, I agree. X-T3 is pretty much identical to the X-T4 when it comes to the color science, the look, and everything like that. The X-T4 just added that in-body image stabilization, and I know a couple other things. But yeah, both really great cameras. And the Panasonic S5 looks really nice. I love that full-frame sensor and its ability to do, I believe, 6K external recording with something like the Ninja V. So really cool things coming out of them still. Let's see. DW says, on the Fujifilm X-T3, have you really had to use 422 recording much? So yeah, so I'm shooting on the X-T4 like I just said, and obviously when I'm shooting with it, I'm using 420 when it's internal, but I usually shoot with the Ninja V because I like shooting in ProRes and being able to edit my ProRes files very quickly in Final Cut. So yes, I'm usually shooting in 422. Do I see a major difference in color science, or I guess you could say like quality between 422 and 420? No. Quick answer. Let's see. John Oy Powell says, I have the Fuji. Man, there's a lot of Fuji users in here. Says, I have the Fujifilm X-T4 and it's really great, especially for on-the-go shooting. Color science, it's amazing. And the Eterna bleach bypass is so cool. I agree. Great camera, great looking stuff all around for photo and video. And Eterna bleach bypass is just kind of cool to use when you want to take some fun photos or whatever. Coffee Boy 6 says, is there anything in between the A7S III and FX3 and the pocket cameras? Is there anything in between? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I would say, if you have the money, spring for the FX3. It's obviously pretty expensive, but it could be a really good long-term camera. Otherwise, the A7S III. If you're looking at the Blackmagic cameras and you're just wanting to get into a Blackmagic camera, I would say go all the way to the top in the sense of the pocket cameras. Get the 6K Pro. It's a fantastic upgrade over the 6K. I would highly recommend it over it. For me, I would skip the Pocket 4K just because I don't like Micro Four Thirds. But if you're on a budget, get the 4K. All right. And finally, some of our final questions here. Coffee Boy 6 is saying, do you think you're going to get the Ninja V? I have the Ninja V. It's sitting on the back shelf there. I use it all the time. Ninja V Plus. I see your the little plus on there. No, not going to get the Ninja V Plus. I don't see a need for it. I know it adds new codecs like H.265 and some other codecs. I think it's like a DNG or whatever. I don't edit with DNG and I don't need that H.265 added. ProRes for me is where it's at because I edit in Final Cut, and Final Cut handles ProRes incredibly well, and so does Resolve. And so yeah, it's not something that I really need at this point. But yeah, man, this has just been so fun. Again, if you're watching, please hit the like button right now. And if you're getting something out of this and you haven't subscribed, be sure to hit subscribe. We've been talking for a little over an hour now, all about what camera brand is best. We looked at the chart. We saw what's been selling the best. It's hard to say. Everything has its pros and cons, right? We talked about camera manufacturers that are innovating really quickly, like Blackmagic, Zcam, even Red. They're acting quick. They're moving fast. They're breaking things and making great cameras. Some of the slower ones like Canon, sometimes I feel like they're getting left behind. And even Sony with their 8-bit APS-C cameras, they've got to get 10-bit or 12-bit into these cameras. Hopefully the new APS-C lineup or the A7C, whatever comes next, will add 10-bit or 12-bit. They're a little bit slower, but they're doing some great stuff. Fujifilm, Panasonic, they've obviously innovated a lot quicker in their APS-C lineups, way quicker before a lot of the other ones having that 4K 60 and 10-bit and everything like that. So it's hard to say which one's the best. Obviously, top of the line in the cinema filmmaking world, it's going to be Arri. It's going to be things like Red. But most of us are shooting on these more prosumer or consumer cameras. So what's the best? That's up to you, obviously. Nikon, it's not you guys. Sorry if you're watching. They're not watching. They don't watch video stuff. But anyways, this has been a ton of fun hanging out with you guys. Please, again, stick around with me. I'll be posting a bunch more videos coming up in the next week. My 6K Pro review is coming out. Hit like if you haven't already. If you got something out of this, hit subscribe, everything like that. It's been a ton of fun hanging out with you guys. Thanks so much for engaging with me. So many fun comments and things back and forth. You know, I didn't see any Canon fanboys come in and do any hate, or Sony guys. It was a lot of Blackmagic and Fuji lovers on here, so that was kind of fun. Not saying any is better than the other, but they're all have their pros and cons. All right, guys, thanks again so much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next live stream. Have a great night or day, wherever you're at. See ya.